Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dine with the Divine. My name is Ashley, and I'm going to be your host into the wonderful world of the magical, the mystical, and everything in between. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the elements of ritual and the goddess Inanna. So today, as usual, we have an absolutely fantastic guest. We have Deborah Lip. Deborah Lip has been teaching Wicca, magic, and the occult for over 35 years. I never say this right, I'm going to try. Gardnerian witch.
Gardnerian.
Okay, thank you. And high priestess. Deborah has been featured in many pagan publications and has appeared in various media, including Coast to Coast AM radio, the A&E documentary Ancient Mysteries, Witchcraft in America, and the New York Times. She's an international speaker and the author of more than 10 books, including Magical Power for Beginners and Bending the Binary. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm happy you're here. So, I would love, if you are willing, for you to share with us how your journey with Wicca began.
Oh my goodness. So, I was initiated into the Gardnerian tradition in 1982.
Okay.
So, before you were born. And, it was hard. It was hard to find when there wasn't an internet. And I really felt very isolated. I also first started seeking Wicca, I didn't know there was a thing called Wicca, but witchcraft and magic and all of that. I started seeking that when I was a teenager. So naturally people were a little weird about, they didn't want a teenager. So it took me a while. It took me actually several years of seeking. And then I found a group in 1981 and I was very lucky. That was a wonderful group led by a wonderful high priestess who has since passed on. I stayed with that group until I started my own group. And I know a lot of people get bounced around and have like tragic stories of the crazy lunatics that they meet and they can't. And groups can be very dysfunctional. But that was not my journey. My journey was I started to understand that I wanted to worship the old gods. And I started to understand that there was something inside me that was magic. And I wanted training. I didn't want to make it up on my own. I was making it up on my own. And I didn't want that. I wanted to get involved with experienced people and get training and, become something with it. And I found a group and that was it. It was home. It was home right away.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing. And a lot of people listening to this, I don't know how many of you listening to this do not remember the days before the internet. Yes, finding these types of things was not easy. Even when I was younger, finding stuff about magical stuff, especially if you go to the library, like there was limited books. Even on the web, like there was limited information. You had a couple of random people who had websites about it. It was like really rough out here.
It was very hard to connect to people and bookstores freaked me out. Every book on magic had like the black cover with the dripping red letters. And I was so freaked out by it, and not even because I thought it was creepy, but because I was sure it was fake. That looked like so much bullshit to me, and I just was looking for something real. And what actually happened is because I'm from the New York area, I used to listen to Margot Adler on the radio. She was a local radio personality, and my mother used to listen to her all the time. So when Drawing Down the Moon came out, I saw that in the bookstore and I was like, no, her.
Yeah.
I bought it and that was my first book. And earlier editions of the book had like addresses for contacts in the back.
Yes.
And that was how I got started.
Wow. Yes. Oh my gosh. Remember when the back of books? Yeah. They used to have, yes. They used to have addresses and like you could even write the author if you wanted to. And maybe you still can, but now people would just email them. But like, they used to have the address and you could send a letter to the publisher, or it would have the address of like other local groups or local associations. And you could, those were the days. And you would wait for the letter back. Oh, it was very exciting. Yeah.
Yep, that was how it was. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope with anything you wrote. Yeah. And of course, book's out for a year and half the addresses in the back of the book are defunct, but it's the best you could do in those days.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Oh, I'm so glad you were able. And another thing you said, which I think is wonderful, is I'm glad that you were able to find a group that you felt so comfortable in, and you had a really person leading the group. That's awesome, because you're right. There's a lot, and I think I won't say if it's better or worse at this point. I'm not going to say that, but it's with the internet and with everybody kind of being like a Google scholar. It's like it's a real hit or miss out here now. It's really, I think, great that you found somebody who you were able to trust, and a group you're able to work with and feel safe. That's great. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to go to our dish of the week because we have a lot to chat about. Our dish of the week this week is, anyway, so let me at least tell you guys what book this is. This is A Kitchen Witch's Cookbook, which is super fun. It's Patricia Telesco, and we've used her book before, and there's a lot of really good recipes in here. So we're going to do, okay, let's do this one, guys. We're going to do lemon chicken. So as she says in the book, in Hindu lands, mangoes are often used in love potions. And we do talk about love later in the episode. So this goes, thank you. Lemon adds clarity to romance. Ginger adds a little liveliness. And lime adds a little zest. So on this lemon chicken from Polynesia, we've got, it's 2 chicken breasts cubed, a tablespoon of grated ginger root, half a tablespoon of grated lime peel, half a tablespoon of grated orange peel, 1 tablespoon lime juice, 1 tablespoon lemon juice, 2 green onions minced, 1 clove of garlic minced, 2 tablespoons olive oil, 1 cup chicken broth, 1 tablespoon soy sauce, 1 lemon thinly sliced, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1 cup of cubed mango, half a teaspoon of sugar, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. A lot of ingredients, but it sounds like it's going to work well together. What you'll do here is you're going to saute the chicken, ginger root, lemon peel, orange peel, lemon juice, lime juice, lemon juice, onions, and garlic in the olive oil until the chicken is white. And then you're going to add chicken broth, soy sauce, and lemon. And you're going to simmer that, stir it up, and simmer for 15 minutes. Mix in the cornstarch with 3 tablespoons. Ooh, sorry, I'm yawning. 3 tablespoons water until smooth. And then you're going to add chicken a little bit at a time and stir constantly. Then you're going to mix in mango, cinnamon, and sugar. Simmer in the mango until the mango is warm and the sauce is thick. And this tastes really good with rice. You could reduce the mango to half a cup and add a half a cup of cubed papaya for passion if you like. This is really good for the magical reasons for this are good romantic love dreams and happily ever after scenarios. And if you're celebrating engagements, vow renewals, Hansel Monday, hand fastings, Valentine's, and sweetest days and anniversaries. This is also good. Okay, and like I said, it's from A Kitchen Witch's Cookbook, which I really love this book. Okay, so that's our dish of the week. So now we're going to go to our tea time. So today we're going to be talking about one of the many books that Deborah has published, and this book is called The Elements of Ritual. So I'm going through this book and I'm like, what are we going to talk about today? Everybody knows what the elements are. This is not something that I think we need to review in depth. So I was like, what part of the book do I think we should talk about? And I picked a part of the book where we talk about the center, which I feel like is people always forget about. Not even forget, but like you talk about, especially like I do a lot of tarot. So people always say what's associated with the tarot suits. But we don't really talk about the center too much and like how we feel about it and like what we're going to talk about. But in the center, in Deborah's book, she writes, the center, here are some of the steps for the center of a ritual. You're going to invoke the gods, giving offerings to the gods, cakes and wine, which is receiving the blessings of the gods and using the blessings. So why I like to talk about why I picked this is you go, what I really like about your book is you go over each other element and you talk about what, like, to make sure you're picking that you want to invoke from those different elements too. Like one that has to do with fire, one that has to do with air, one that has to do with earth. I really like that. And the other thing I really like that you talk about in here, and I feel like people don't do it so much, is when you are trying to bring a deity into your ritual or your practice, I think it's really important. I totally agree with you. You have to know a lot about the deity. Not a ton, you don't have to be a scholar. But I see a lot of people being like, I'm going to invoke so and then they just, it falls flat. And then people will be like, I don't understand why it fell flat. I think sometimes if you don't really know the culture of that deity, if you're offering that deity like whatever you got on hand and not something specifically that they may like, I'm not saying you have to go and like buy something expensive, but like you need to, if you can't just give like somebody apples. You can't be like, oh, this deity wants apples when they've never said they liked apples, or you've never read anything, or even in the part of the world they're from, apples don't grow. They might not understand why you're giving them apples and be like, eh. I think it's really important that we learn a lot about the deities that we're talking to. And I really like how you have a section you talk about like paganism and like one god versus, how do you see it in the book? Dutheism versus polytheism, but it's like it's all one and the same. But I never even thought of it as like two different ways of thinking. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, those are very different concepts. Mm-hmm. And so what I structure the book around is I use the elements to just structure around different topics, right? Air is all the thinking stuff. It's the theology. It's the ideas. It's why do you do what you do? And one of the reasons that I wrote the book was because like I got really frustrated that nobody seemed to know why they were doing what they were doing. They were just doing things. You know what I mean? And there wasn't really anything out there that would say, there were so many books in the 80s and in the 90s. There were like hundreds of books that were here's paganism 101. Yeah. Here's gods, and here's how to do a little ritual, and but that, like, why am I doing this? And if I don't know why I'm doing it, like I have no mastery over it.
Yeah.
Like I can't change it. So the air is the theology, and the water is the mythology, and the earth is all the really practical stuff, how you do what you do, and how like not to accidentally step in a hole when you're doing a ritual, which happens, break your ankle during ritual. And fire is the mysticism. Mm-hmm. So every single thing that you do in ritual, I've broken down into those four things. So when we talk about invoking the gods, when I talk about air, I'm like, what does it mean to believe in gods? Mm-hmm. Polytheism there's so many nuances, right?
Yeah.
Polytheism means many gods, but are you a hard polytheist? Means every god is an individual god, the same way every person is an individual person. Or are you a soft polytheist, which means that the gods are named beings, but ultimately they're all one?
Yeah.
Or duotheism is that everything comes down to this dual universe where everything is either the goddess and the god. There's two. And so all of these are different beliefs, and there's dozens and dozens of sort of shades of gray in between those big, broad categories. But I just want to give people tools where they can make their own decision. Mm-hmm. I am not interested in telling anybody what to believe.
Yeah.
I am interested in telling people what's available to them, mm-hmm. and what they might believe and what that implies. And what I don't want is for you to decide that you are a soft polytheist and all gods are one, but your ritual is structured in a way that it is more consistent with like a hard polytheist. Each of these is a specific and separate individual, or vice versa. Have what you do in your pagan practice be consistent with what you say you believe. Mm-hmm. Isn't that a good idea?
Did you already know how you wanted to frame it, or as you went on, did you figure out like exactly why you were doing what you were doing, or were you at first a lot of people just doing it because it's like, this is what they say I should do, and I'm not exactly sure why.
Always asked a lot of questions. So I was, first of all, I was 21 when I first became a witch. I was young, very eager to be told what to do. Really, I wasn't satisfied with doing it on my own. I wanted a teacher. So tell me what to do. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wanted to be told what to do because I wanted it to work.
Yeah.
So tell me why this works and doing it some other way doesn't work. And sometimes, like, my teacher would say, do it this way because this way works and this other way doesn't. And I would be like, I don't know. And I would try it the other way. Oh, you were right. That sucked. And because we've all been, I think if you've been involved in the pagan community for a minute, we've all been to bad rituals. We've all been to boring rituals. We've all been to rituals where no energy was anywhere to be seen.
Yeah.
So let's not do that. The idea was always like, let's do the thing that works. And the number one like rule of ritual is this works. Creates a consistent metaphysical paradigm that gets you from beginning to end with amazing energy and feeling good. I've been doing this now for 42 years. Like, what you need in your paganism is to be good enough at it that it sustains you. Like, it needs to keep you going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there are a million things out there in the world that you can do for 5 years, and then you're going to get bored and walk away.
Yeah.
But in order to do it for 42 years, it has to really be rich and complex and consistent and smart. It has to be all of those things.
That's a very good point. Also, I would think you've been doing this, like you said, for 42 years, so like quite a while. But because of like, everybody's spiritual connection is different. And if you don't feel it, like if you're feeling like it's lacking, obviously then that you won't want to keep doing, like you're saying. After 5 years, you'll be like, this is not good. This is not working. This sucks. Like, and all the relationships that a lot of us have with deities or spirit and whatever you want to call it, it's something that needs to be nurtured and worked on, right? Like, yeah. So realizing that and having a guide like yours here to at least get you to the point where you're like, okay, I can structure a ritual that I can use to continue to foster this relationship, I think is super, super helpful to a lot of people.
The intention was to be helpful.
Yeah.
What you said about not knowing anything about the deity you worship, I think if we're pagans and we worship gods, whatever we conceive those gods to be, we should be respectful of them. You know what I mean? If I have a person come to my house for dinner, before I go out and buy ingredients for my dinner, I'm going to ask them, do you have allergies? Do you have favorite foods? Are you a vegan or something? Or are you kosher? Like, what restrictions do I need to adhere to? And what can I do that will make you feel comfortable and welcome? And if I'm going to treat a person that way, I'm definitely going to treat a god that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I see. And I just see a lot of that. And I've talked about this before, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to be rude to anybody, but I see a lot of with the witchy aesthetic has come a lot of people just saying that they want to do stuff and not doing any research into it. There's a lot of that. And that's why I brought that up before, because I was like, we have so much information now. You can literally go on just Wikipedia. If you decide that you're like, you know what, I really want to maybe work with this deity, you could literally just go on Wikipedia and read about them. And it will give you the history. It'll tell you what region of the world they're from. It'll tell you about some of their followers. It might tell you about some of the rules maybe that their followers tend to follow. You can do the smallest amount of research on any deity. Of course, there's amazing pagan authors and historians and archaeologists, but you can buy their books too, and I think you should. But if you just want to be super, super basic, you just go on Wikipedia. But I just see that a lot of people still don't do that. And I'm like, how do you expect any of this to work? Like, you don't know anything about these, or even like historical context is super important. I know we've talked about that in the past too, even with like ancestors, we've talked about historical context is super important. We had Ben Stimson on and he talked about ancestors. He was talking about knowing he had a friend who had indigenous ancestors and Irish ancestors, and the indigenous ancestors were really not okay with alcohol, but the Irish ancestors were. So like knowing that was super important to that friend's magical workings. You can't just throw things at the wall and look at and hope that it works, especially when you're working with these ancestors and especially when you're working with deities. And also, like you said, you're having someone over for dinner, you want to make them feel, first of all, you're going to make them feel good. You're going to ask them their dietary restrictions, what they like, that kind of thing. Same thing for deities. And deities are big spirits. They're big, if you believe, they're bigger than us. So to just go into stuff very flippantly doesn't really make a lot of sense, and you probably shouldn't. And what you're going to do is just maybe at best, just not get a response, and at worst, piss somebody off. Like, you know what I mean? And then shit's gonna go wrong, and you're gonna be confused. Then you gotta call somebody who knows how to do this better than you to fix it. So, everyone, be careful out there. Just be very careful. Okay. The other thing I liked in this section of your book was that you talk about like how to invoke the god, and I love how you just talk about like one of the being very okay, let me start at the beginning. You talk about being very specific, like to what you are talking about, especially because a lot of deities have dual roles, right? Like they might be a deity that is the god or goddess of fertility, war, like Freya is like fertility, cats, war, like pick one. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's got a lot going on, and they're very different subjects. So you don't want to just invoke her for whatever, and you really want her for something else. Maybe you'll find a stray cat and you'll fall in love with it, but you really wanted to get pregnant. Like, you've got to pick.
Oh, you want to hear a funny story?
Absolutely.
My friend had a custom design business, right? So she was sewing for a living. And so she invoked Arachne. Mm-hmm. Except she didn't invoke Arachne very carefully. And it's exactly what you said. It's cats, it's pregnancy, what is it? So her basement was full of spiders. Oh, like thousands and thousands of spiders. It was so horrible. And she's like, I did this. This is my own fault.
That's when you have to go back and be like, hey, Arachne, thanks for the gift. By the way.
Awesome.
Was hoping you could do me a little favor and get rid of the spiders and just like help my business. Oh, that is really funny. So yeah, that's super important. Like you talk about here, like calling Thor the Thunderer or Hathor the cow goddess, lady of milk, and Hathor is also a mom. So like it just depends what you're doing. Be very specific. Then you talk about descriptiveness, and I love that too. Most of the deities that you think of, they have things that you can think of. And you write in here like Bridget has very flaming red hair. Odin's got one eye. Aphrodite is like super, super beautiful. Or what they wear. Like Oshun wears brass bracelets, or Ogun uses chains. Like something that they wear. Kali in here you write about who has a necklace of skulls. You want to bring that up so they know exactly who you are referencing.
And not just them. So like ritual has to, when you're invoking a deity, right? You're invoking them and they're external, but they're also internal, and you're reaching inside of yourself. You're awakening the part of you that is making that connection. Mm-hmm. And how do you awaken? And it's like your inner child, right? Yeah. How do you awaken the inner child? You awaken it with imagery. Mm-hmm. And with language that is simple and concrete. Yes. Inner self, your most powerful inner being, is childlike. Yeah. And doesn't want big language. It wants colors, senses, like nouns and adjectives, man. Like keep it simple and keep it specific and evocative. Like as if you were telling a story to a group of kindergartners. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of language you want to use in your invocations. You want to say red, gold, loud, quiet, tall. Like you want like imagery, and you want to be evocative. You want, if you're not working alone, if you're working with other people, you want every single person in the room who is part of this ritual to be on board with that imagery, so that you're all creating it together. And so that group thought form is opening all of you up to the presence of that deity, and that while that deity is hearing that, and it's mutual, it's an exchange of energy.
Yes. Yes. And that goes to your next point here in the book, where you talk about praise. And again, doing it just the way that you're talking about, you can be very simple, but you just want to use, I like how you said, you want the gods to come, so be nice to them. Absolutely. So like, but again, it can be simple. It's as simple as just finding nice words. Like you said, you write a bunch of them in here. Great, glorious, lovely, mighty, wise, blessed, honored. These are easy things to think of, and they come through usually. And a lot of the times, I found when I'm doing a ritual, or when we're like calling in certain energy or whatever, or invoking gods, it starts to come real naturally. Because especially when it's like a deity that you're like, I know this one, I work with them, I know a lot about them. You know exactly what you're going to say about them because you've read their biography. It's like going to a rock show, right? Like, this is your favorite singer. You know everything about their life story, like their family history, when they became a singer, their greatest inspirations. It's not going to be hard for you to tell your friends about this person and how you feel about them and what you love about them. And that's the same thing as for your deity. So when you're talking to you, just imagine you're just up on a stage and you're telling everybody how great they are. And you're just talking to them. They're like, oh yeah, we praise the insert deity because of your this, that, and the third. All the stories, everything, all the good stuff they've done, how strong they are, how smart they are, how clever they are, it's whichever thing they do. And then you write the couple phrases you write, like you can say, whom we adore, honor us with your presence. That's something I love to always say, honor us with your presence, because thank you for coming. First of all, you don't have to be here. You could have been anywhere else tonight, but you're here. Without whom XYZ bad thing would happen, or without whom good things wouldn't happen. And then you talk about a need. So you should tell the gods why it is that you need them to come, what you want from them, and reasons you're inviting them. And some of the reasons you write here to include, you write that you may worship them, to witness a rite, to enjoy the rite, to guide the children, to protect their children, to hear us praise them, to receive offerings, to bless us, whatever it is that you like. So then you write some really good examples in here, and they're really, like, when you read them, everybody, this book is really, I think this book is super good for advanced practitioners. And I know you come from a Wiccan tradition, but anybody who does rituals, this book, it goes along with it. You don't have to, at least, I don't know, you tell me how you feel about it, Deborah, but I feel like I'm not a Wiccan, but I still got a lot out of this.
That was the point. So I write it from a Wiccan perspective, and because I feel like write what you know, write what you're good at. If you try to be like too much of a generalist, then you're just mushy and you don't say anything. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this, and they end up saying nothing at the end.
Yeah.
But I'm very specific, and I'm speaking from the point of view of the stuff I know, which is Wicca.
Yeah.
But if you can't pick that up and translate it into whatever you're doing, you're not paying attention. And honestly, even if you're Wiccan, your version of Wicca might be very different from mine.
Yeah.
And you might be reading it and going, well, I'm not going to do that. I disagree with that. Again, I'm giving zillions of examples, but I'm also trying to teach some core principles of how to put this thing together in a way that makes sense to you. It's amazing to me how many people don't make ritual make sense to themselves. Like, I know I'm pagan and I know I want to worship the gods and I don't know how, so I'm just going to throw some spaghetti at the wall and see what's... They don't try to query themselves as to how is this going to work.
Yeah.
The elements of ritual does is it gives you like a toolkit
Mhm.
to do that for yourself. And now my toolkit is Wiccan and maybe yours isn't,
Mhm.
but it's still a toolkit.
Yes.
And I also did, I should say, I wrote this book. This was my first book, and I wrote it over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I was looking, this is silly and this sounds like such a humble brag, but I was like, I was writing a book, was finishing a book, and I wanted to write a dedication and was like, oh, I don't remember who I've written all my other dedications to because I've written a lot of books. So I wrote a list of all my books and the year they were published and who it was dedicated to. And I was like, oh my God, I wrote this in 2003. I'm not the best at math, but it was 2023 and I could add 20.
Yeah.
And I was look at this, look, it's been 20 years. Maybe we could do like an anniversary edition, like a brand new. So I went through and I updated it. So all of the research is new and updated that had just been sitting there for 20 years were corrected. And it was also much more modern, both in terms of there's an internet. The original edition referenced VHS.
Yeah.
So just technologically modern, and it makes sense today.
Yeah.
But also, like in 2003, it was a very gender normative book. It was a very heteronormative book, even though I'm queer, that was the Wicca that I was taught how to not write that way. So all of that has been updated as well. So this is a brand new edition of this book, and it is just fully cover to cover. Every word has been revisited and brought up to date.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And you can tell, like when you're reading it, you can just tell like it's you include a lot of stuff in this book. It's very dense. There's a lot of information, but it's not hard to read. It's not hard to understand. Everything is here. And whether, like I said, if you're a beginner, it's a good book to have on your shelf that you can go back like many times and check it out. Or if there's something you're wondering about, something you're thinking about, it's one of those really good reference books. And I freaking love a reference book.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's big. You could kill a home invader with it. It's very heavy.
It's a good sized book. It's not crazy though, again, like I said, and you don't have to read it all in one sitting. You can take a couple pages, take what you want from it, and then when you are doing something, you're like, you know what, let me see what Deborah has to say about this. And you just the book and see what you say.
A lot of people do like book discussion groups with it, and what a lot of people do is they'll just go through and just do one element.
Yeah.
So let's just read the air sections in every chapter and discuss the ideas. Or we're doing a ritual, so let's just read the earth sections and get practical tips.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So people have a lot of fun with skipping around in it that way. And I didn't know people were going to do that before I wrote the book, but I love that people like make it their own that way.
Yes. I love it. So this is, like I said, this is Deborah's book. Please check it out. It's a good idea. And we're going to talk now about a goddess, and you mentioned her actually in this section. That's why I was like, we never talked about her. Let's talk about her. We're going to talk about Inanna, and I always say Inanna, and I hope that's right. So she is a Sumerian goddess, and she's mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which a lot of people, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you do know what I'm talking about. You probably had to read it when you were in high school. If you grew up in the Western Hemisphere, I don't know about other places. But if you grew up in America, you probably had to read this book. It's a good book. It's interesting. So we're going to talk a little bit about the goddess Inanna. We're going to tell a little bit about her story. So the goddess Inanna, also called the Queen of Heaven, from ancient Sumer. Sumer is that area, Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent, another thing, remember, that you learned about in history in school. Some think that she is the progenitor of the goddesses Venus and Aphrodite, who are the same goddess. So she tricked the god of wisdom, Enki, her dad, into giving her special tools, including the valuable tablets of destiny, which gave her powers. So what happened was she managed to get her dad drunk, and by the time he got sober, she had left. She already took his shit. And he tried to get his tools back, but he couldn't. So he just accepted the defeat and let Inanna have it. And Inanna was super, super powerful, but she was also super lonely and felt really isolated. She was super sad because she was like, oh, I just want a partner. So soon she had two people who were coming after her that wanted to date her. One was a farmer named Enki also, but not her dad. It was a different person. Enki, short for Enkidu. And the other was Dumuzi, who was a shepherd. So we had a farmer and a shepherd. I don't know who's better in a farmer and a shepherd. I don't know their personalities, but I'm like, ooh, farmers have more land probably, maybe different animals. A shepherd only has one type of animal. We'll see what she picks. Either way, both of them gave her gifts, but Dumuzi had all these super soft wools because he was a shepherd, and it gave him an edge in the game because she was like, ooh, I love all these wools. I can sleep on them. I can cover myself when it's cold. Like, this is cute. While she's like dating these two people and she's like trying to figure out what she likes, she's also super worried about her sister, who's a mess, and we'll talk about her a different time. So her sister is Eriskigal, and
Ereshkigal, I think.
Yeah, probably Eriskigal. You said, right?
Ereshkigal, yeah. Nobody knows. Like, nobody speaks Sumerian anymore.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is from a very long time ago, but we're all doing our best. Eriskigal is what we're going to go with. So she was super worried about her sister Eriskigal, and she decided to visit the underworld because that's where Eriskigal lives. And we'll talk about her later because it's a whole thing. Eriskigal's husband, who's the god of death, had recently left her, which is messed up. And Inanna was super concerned about her sister because I think she loved her sister, but she also did not want to see her because they also didn't really like each other. But Inanna's kind of nicer than Eriskigal, at least from everything I've read. She's way nicer. Eriskigal's not that nice, but it's fine. But she went anyway. And also because the two of them weren't super close, like they didn't really get along. But she was like, I got to check on my sister. Her husband left her. This is rough. So she went down there. So when she got there, there's 7 gates of the underworld, and the gatekeeper demanded that she left one of her garments. So he required her to leave her jewels and even her crown at the door. So then finally, when she saw her sister, she stood before her sister, and she had left all her stuff there. So she was naked. That's crazy. He didn't let her take her clothes? That's wild. That was rude. Anyway, but Eriskigal was really mad at her and felt like Inanna hadn't been supportive enough as a sister. And she was like, how come it took you this long to come visit me when you know my husband left me and I've been super sad? And Inanna was like, I'm sorry about that. And Eriskigal was like, I don't care how sorry you are, I'm going to murder you. And she murdered her sister on sight. This is what I'm talking about. Eriskigal needs anger management. Like, we all go through trauma, and I get it. But like, killing your sister on sight is a bit much. Come on. Seriously. But Inanna knew that her sister was wild. She said before she left, she knew her sister was out of pocket. So she told one of her servants that if she didn't come back, that they should try to come rescue her. So when the servant was waiting, and when she didn't come back, the servant was like, oh shit. So he went to Enki, now Enki the dad, not the other Enki. He went to Enki and was like, Enki, please, I know you're pissed at Inanna because she stole all your shit, but also I think your other daughter murdered her. So like, we need a little help. So Enki's, I guess I should help my one daughter, even though the other one murdered her. Let's help. So what he did, and this is gross, but he sculpted 2 tiny creatures from the clay beneath his fingernail. I'm sure there was tons of clay. They didn't need to use that one, but that's all right. I'm not going to judge. So he sent them into the underworld, the 2 little clay figures with the servant, and carried this magical substance, which was called the food and water of life. When the servant got down there, the 2 little clay statues went over to Eriskigal like they were just like super nice people. And Eriskigal is crying because Eriskigal obviously has an anger problem. So once she realized she murdered her sister, she did feel bad. She's like, damn, I was really doing a lot, and I was upset, and I didn't mean to kill my sister. So these two little figures came over, and they're like, hey girl, you okay? And she's like, oh my God, I'm so upset. I just killed my sister. And now my husband left me, and I killed my sister. What a week. So they were like they were being like really nice to her, and they were like, oh, they were bringing her tissues, they were like probably made her some tea, and they were just like touching her back gently and like, girl, it's gonna be okay. So then Eriskigel during this whole time was like, oh my god, you guys are so nice, thank you so much for like comforting me. Meanwhile, she didn't wonder where they came from. I don't know, it's mythology, we don't ask too many questions. So Eriskigel was like, thank you so much for like taking such a good care of me. Is there anything I can do for the two of you? And they were like, actually, you know how there's like a corpse on your wall? She's like, yeah, that's my sister, the one I've been crying about. And they were like, oh, that's crazy. Because we were just wondering if we could like see it, like if you could bring it down. And she's like, okay. So she brought it down, and they took the water and the food of life and they started feeding it to Inanna's corpse. And all of a sudden, Inanna woke up and she's like, oh, what happened? She realized, oh, my sister killed me. And Inanna requested that she would be allowed to return to the world. So I guess Inanna, again, she realizes that her sister is like not well. So she probably didn't want to get into a fight about the fact that she killed her at that moment. She's like, this woman is nuts. I don't want to bring it up. I'm just going to forgive her in the moment. We'll deal with it later. But the biggest thing was Inanna was like, can I go back to the world? And Eriskigel was like, okay, but rules are rules, girl. So the thing is, I know I killed you and I should do you a solid, but we still have to follow some rules. I will let you go back up, but you have to bring somebody to be in your place. And she's like, oh shit. Okay, fine. So Inanna was like, fine. Give me a minute. I'm going to go up there and I'll bring somebody back. And then she's like, fine. So Inanna, she ascended through the 7 gates. She went and got all her clothes and her crown and everything. And she went back up. She left out of the underworld and back into the regular world. Now, when she got home back to her like regular palace, she realized that the one she liked, Dumuzi, the shepherd with the soft wool, can you believe he usurped her throne? He did a coup d'etat in her absence. That's wild. So he literally took her palace. And so Inanna got up there, and let's just say that this anger thing definitely runs in the family, because Inanna lost her shit that she killed Dumuzi, and she sent him back to the underworld. She's like, oh, I need someone to take my place anyway. Threw him down there. I was like, problem solved. We're good. After she chilled out, after a couple minutes, Inanna was like, damn, that was rough. I probably shouldn't have been so quick to throw my lover into the underworld with my other sister who also has an anger problem. She went down there to go talk to Eriskigel again, and she was like, Eriskigel, girl, number 1, I forgive you. Number 2, I see where you're coming from now, because I just did the same shit that you did. I made a rash decision. And I was wondering, you know how you killed me and everything? You know how I forgave you? And I was like, yeah, I'll bring somebody down here. I think I may have sent the wrong person. I sent my soon-to-be husband. So actually, like, could I have him back? Like, that'd be great. And Eriskigel was like, girl, I told you about the rules. And Inanna's like, I know. But please, like, let's see what we can do. So Eriskigel's like, okay, this is what I can do. I'm going to let Dumuzi come home, but only half of the year. He can't come home all the time, just half of the year. Inanna was like, okay, damn, that's crazy. Okay, fine. Half is better than none. So now, each year, Inanna must descend again into the underworld to resurrect her hubby, lover, person, and renew her vitality. And then Dumuzi now is given life every time Inanna brings him up. And now he became the god of vegetation. You guys are hearing the whole similar story to the Greek Hades Persephone thing. And fortunately, he's allowed to return to Earth each spring to fertilize the land and hang out with Inanna for a while. That's the story of two sisters who both need therapy deeply. But they're like, we love them. At least we love Inanna because she means well. She just didn't like, if I came home and if you came home and your partner had stolen all your stuff, You're gonna be mad. I don't blame her for like, but you might not want to murder them. You might just want to sue them or something next time. Don't like murder them. That's wild. So yeah, that's the story of Inanna. But also, quick thing, since we were talking about invoking gods, we talk about people love to talk about Inanna or evoke Inanna a lot. And she has a couple of things that you might want to know. She really loves rosettes. She loves scepters. She loves wool. She likes apples, mirrors. There's a knot of Inanna, and she likes crowns. She's usually associated with fertility, politics, war. A lot of gods and goddesses with the fertility and the war. I don't know. I feel like I need to research that. But it goes together a lot, I've noticed, in a lot of cultures. She's also seen as being very, very feminine, very feminine, very courageous, wise, and but also can be associated with death and destruction, like we just heard in the story. She's associated with lions because lions are very courageous, and it was courageous of her for her to go down and face her sister who just murdered her, but then let her come back up. Like, that took a lot of courage. Good job, girl. And she also is associated with lilies, grace, innocence, rebirth, obviously. The scent of a lily plant and lilies of the valley are really can attract her. Lotus plants, myrrh, lilac, limes. She loves gold. She loves rubies, emeralds, if you have that. Ooh, nice. Rubies, emeralds, obsidian, and andalusite. And her colors are green, black, red, silver, and white. There's a lot of different things you can do with Inanna. She's super awesome. Now you know, if you want to talk to her, now you at least know her story. And you at least know, maybe if you are trying to get some courage, you might want to call her. If you're trying to fix your anger, maybe don't call her. Like, she's not really the one for that. But yeah, maybe if you're in trouble with your sister, maybe you want to call her and talk to her about it. Maybe she can help you figure it out. Inanna's really cool, and I really liked reading about her because she's very neat. And I look, the Mesopotamian goddesses and gods, they have really cool stories, everybody. If you want to read some stories, read theirs, because like Enki, he has a whole situation going on. Eriskigel, oh girl, she has a whole love triangle. People are, and other than Inanna, she's murdering mad people, and people are trying to murder her. It's like really interesting. Anyway, so that's the story of Inanna, everybody. Thank you all for listening to me rant about one of my new faves. So this now brings us to the end of the show. Deborah, thank you so much for being here and chit-chatting with us. This has been super fun and informative, and I learned a lot. You want to let us know where we can find you on the internet or anywhere else that people might...
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're a wonderful storyteller. And that is the oldest story written down. Mm-hmm. That is the oldest story in human history. So that's a fun one.
Yes.
You can find me. My website is DeborahLip.com. I spelled Deborah the long way, DeBorah. My last name Lip, Lip. DeborahLip.com. It's at Deb Lip Author on the various things where you have at, you know. And I'm on Facebook because I'm old. That's where we are. And so you can find me on Facebook, Insta, my website. I try to keep my website updated with where I'm going to be physically. Like if I do a book signing or whatever, sometimes I forget, but I try. You can also, I have many books. I have this book, The Elements of Ritual, is with Llewellyn. I have a bunch of books with Llewellyn. I also have 2 books with Cross Crow Press. I also have 1 self-published book. So you can find all kinds of stuff, and that's me.
Yay! Thank you so much. And obviously, all the links to all of Deborah's works will be in the show notes. So if you want to check any of those out and you want to check out her social, everything will be in the show notes. No problem. Okay, so thank you everybody for hanging out with us for another week. This is Dine with the Divine. We're on TikTok. Oh, we're on wherever you can find podcasts. We're on TikTok. We're on YouTube. We're on Threads and Instagram. Obviously, sometimes I can't keep up with all that because I'm tired, but I do my best. And if you want to message me on any of those, feel free. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to email me at dinewiththedivinepod@gmail.com. Don't forget to check out our Diners Club membership if you want to get some freebies or join a Discord chat, you can do that. Also, if you want to follow me, Ashley, I'm at Sankofa Healing Sanctuary or at Sankofa HS. That's SANKOFAHS on Threads, in TikTok. I try to sometimes make TikTok videos, but I'm really bad at that, but it's no problem. Yeah, you can check me out too, and you can hang out with me or talk to me, whatever you like. Anyway, once again, thank you everybody for hanging out with us, and I'll see you again next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.